Welcome to White Guys for Kamala. We are discussing the 2024 election and how the modern man can make a difference. My name is John Ennis. This is my co-host Morley. Our guest this week is Teachr, legendary LA street artist. And we're going to open it up by talking this week about character. Character is the kind of word that you always heard your parents talking about when you're young, you know? Character is the thing that's like you do something you don't want to do and it builds character somehow, you know? I was thinking and looking up definitions of how people describe character. One of them was doing the right thing when no one is watching and even when people are watching. One thing I learned recently was character is how you behave when you do not get what you want. And I think that's a pretty revealing one that we're seeing right now. How would you guys define character?
Well, I'll just say, you know, for me, a lot of it is trying to, because I have a 6-year-old, and I'm in a constant state of trying to help this person define their character, you know, and for me, a lot of it is similar to what you're sort of saying, like it's, you know, helping him process through losing a game, you know, winning well, losing well, sharing, you know, the idea, it's funny because like there are times where it just feels so counterintuitive, like we'll be at the park and he'll have, you know, I've brought a toy and it's like, if some kid wants to play with it, I'd say, well, we should share. But if some other kid has a toy and he wants to play with it, I say, well, we got to give him the ability to say no. We've got to respect his, you know. And so there's just so many nuances, obviously, to it. But I think that when I see older kids that maybe struggle with, you know, things, you know, whether it's in public or whatever, with disappointment of any kind, it's generally, I think, because they just haven't learned to process through the frustration that comes along with being told no, you know, and they certainly haven't learned the sense of gratitude for all the times they've heard yes, you know. So I think it's somewhere in that kind of stew you generally, I think, define your character. What do you think?
Well, I used to think that I had a lot of character. I grew up in a military family, very strict, and when I got off on my own, I was like a wandering nomad. I did what I wanted when I wanted to do it. And so I felt like, you know, building character was taking, you know, everything and then figuring out what you wanted to do and doing the right thing, doing the best thing that you could do for yourself. But then though I met my wife and she had twins, and I went from being able to do what I wanted when I wanted to do it to not being able to do anything when I wanted to do it. And learning how to handle that and not letting it aggravate me, I feel like that built a lot of character. Because, you know, it was like I was a free bird and then I became a caged bird. Mm-hmm. And to keep from just going absolutely crazy, I feel like I had to build a good amount of character and learn how to handle that well. And not only that, but then, you know, be a good example for the kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I feel like for guys of our age and probably older, character and, you know, ethical understanding of right and wrong were pretty binary. I would imagine, especially in a military background, this idea of like, this is the strict definition of what is right, what is wrong. You know, you're supposed to be a man of your word. You're supposed to be chivalrous. You're supposed to be this, you know, and laying down all these very sort of easy qualifiers, you know, that aren't necessarily easy to achieve, but certainly like, you know, this is what I'm supposed to do as a man. And I think that as time has moved on, and I think that the definition of men and their roles have kind of become a little more blurry, I feel like it's left a lot of us wondering sort of what is the proper definition when things, I think, become less defined that way.
There's also the, I would think, innate thought that everyone else sees things the way that you do.
Right, of course.
And then when you see people doing other things and it doesn't make sense, then, you know, it's like, well, what the hell is wrong with them?
Right. I mean, for me, a lot of things as far as my character and my morality, to some degree or another, have been defined by my faith. And watching a lot of people within my faith, I feel, redefine those ideas of what's right and wrong. When I see especially support of Donald Trump, I feel like these, the sort of anchors of what I felt like, well, this is what Christ speaks on in terms of caring for the poor, and empathy and things of those nature. And then when you see that kind of become like, oh, well, yeah, that doesn't really matter. All that matters is this, and you're like, oh, wow, it feels like there's a lot of this is slipping away, this notion of what it is. And so I feel like a lot of people in this generation feel that way. And I feel like they're having to define it more. Whereas before, I feel like we were depending on our parents more to define that for us, this idea of what is right and what is wrong. And I think you get a lot.
I did until I started. I grew up as a Christian Methodist, and then became aware of other religions. And when I was about 7 or 8 years old, the idea of Santa Claus became, I became aware that was a lie. So from that point on, belief in my parents' full belief wasn't necessarily there. So it caused me to kind of check out, other religions and everything. But how
did that go down with your parents when you started doing that?
Well, I didn't really vocalize much of it around them because I know that they're Christian, and I did tell them that what I was doing. I didn't become a part of any other religion. I just became what I call universal, because it seemed like most religions kind of have a version of the golden rule: do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Yeah. And so I felt like it helped me to understand a little bit better why people don't think the way that I do. Right. Because if you're raised a certain way, that's all you know. If you're raised to know that, okay, if you do this, you should die.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to my dad was in the armament laboratory at Eglin Air Force Base building bombs and stuff like that, and mines, and went to work with him one day and saw everything. And I guess it was that was 12 years old, and maybe a couple years later, I finally got the guts up to ask my dad. I said, "Dad, so we're Christians, okay." And I mean, I couldn't tell you the 10 Commandments. You hold a gun to my head right now, but I do know that, love your neighbor and thou shalt not kill, pretty prominent on that. And so I just asked my dad, I was like, so, you make, machines that kind of kill people without going through a due process of law or whatever. And he was ready for that day. He had a scripture picked out. Wow. And I don't remember what it was. I don't remember exactly what it said, but I remembered that it rationalized for him what he did. But unfortunately for me, it kind of led me to believe that, if you think someone's a bad person, it's okay to kill them. Luckily, I never got in any big fights in school until I got to that, age of reasoning and understanding.
Right. Wow. In Kamala's campaign this week, there was the much vaunted CNN interview. We'll look at a clip of it and talk about it, as well as a lot of the hype around it.
You have been vice president for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
The steps that you're talking about now, why haven't you done them already?
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%. The work that we have done to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Donald Trump said he was going to do a number of things, including allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Never happened. We did it. So now, as I travel in the state of Georgia and around our country, the number of seniors that have benefited. I was in Nevada recently, a grandmother who showed me her receipts. And before we capped the cost of insulin for seniors at $35 a month, she was paying hundreds of dollars, up to thousands of dollars a month for her insulin. She's not doing that anymore.
You maintain Bidenomics is a success.
I maintain that when we do the work of bringing down prescription medication for the American people, including capping the cost of the annual cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000, when we do what we did in the first year of being in office to extend the child tax credit so that we cut child poverty in America by over 50%, when we do what we have done to invest in the American people and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so that we created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, bringing business back to America. What we have done to improve the supply chain so we're not relying on foreign governments to supply American families with their basic needs, I'll say that that's good work. There's more to do, but that's good work.
It's interesting to hear those questions and hear those answers and to compare that to the questions that Donald Trump has asked, and the responses that Donald Trump gives, in terms of you certainly see it obviously with, in every situation where he's ever called to task or anything, his response, beyond even the defensive qualities that he always, immediately trots out, there's never any real substance to them, at all.
The problem is, though, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
They are so good at understanding that if they tell the same thing enough times, that people are going to believe it.
That's what his press secretary said. It doesn't matter. If you just repeated it enough, they'll believe it. A lot of the hype going into this interview is that she hadn't spoken to the press enough in sit-down interviews, and she was actually relying on social media influencers to show.
I remember them giving her a hard time about having to have, the vice president or the
the nominee,
the nominee vice.
These are some of the headlines right here. VP Harris mocked for being too scared to do interview without Walz. She simply cannot be left unattended. Huckabee Sanders blasts Harris for doing joint interview with Walz. Can't do it by herself. Harris should fly solo in her first big interview. She shouldn't need a co-pilot. Stefanik. Kamala Harris's joint interview is offensive to women.
There's lots of precedents for doing an interview with your VP pick.
There's Mitt Romney, there's Paul Ryan, there's Trump, there's Mike Pence, there's Biden and Obama, there's Biden and Kamala. Meghan McCain, always one to have her opinions known, said, I don't know if Democrats fully realize how damaging the image of the possible first woman president being incapable of giving an interview alone without the presence of a man to help her is. And Brian Tyler Cohen responded, okay, Meghan, with a picture of John McCain and Sarah Palin doing their joint interview. The hypocrisy is always an afterthought.
Whatever works for them at the present time is what they go for.
It's an instant outrage thing.
Well, and certainly you see just this idea of when nothing matters, when you can hit reset on anything in a matter of weeks, the history becomes so shallow.
With such a short race, they have to pull out the most absurd things, and the misogyny is a quick one. So, but this guy in particular makes men look bad because of how he always handles it.
This is where the president has his most impact. You have a lot of room to maneuver there as commander-in-chief. We don't know who she is. We don't know what she believes. She's going to get paralyzed in the Situation Room while the generals have their way with her. Right now...
Jesse Waters. Jesse, I don't like that.
Figuratively, again.
Take it back.
Have their way with her. Control her. Not in a sexual way.
Jesse Waters to me is like if poop could smirk, you know?
In some ways,
it was clearly his intention. And he even looks at the camera like, I see what I got away with by lying to these women in front of me, that I wasn't saying that she would be sexually molested by the generals, He
is just so happy being just a smug piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like he just loves that role. More so, I would say, even in some ways than Tucker Carlson ever did.
Oh, yeah. No, I think you're right. I think he's worse. And as offensive as it is to women, it also jumps out to me. I'm like, wow, he's really just saying our generals are rapists. Like, naturally, they're just going to, like any man, when they have that opportunity, is going to try to overpower someone, even if it's the most powerful person in the world.
Right. Also this idea that like Trump was never overpowered by generals, was never overpowered by the dictators he wanted to impress. It's like known by all of the people that were in his administration that how easily pliable he was if you but just be the last person that gave him a compliment, and you see it obviously in terms of how he deals with things, in terms of just like, this is who he wants to impress this week,
Right. So we'll start off with the Arlington Cemetery. This is the finished product.
Great people. What a horrible day it was. We didn't lose one person in 18 months. And then they took over that disaster, the leaving of Afghanistan.
So this is an illegal ad. He was told specifically that you can't film political content at Arlington Cemetery.
Long-running rule, not
Right.
just a new thing.
Yeah. And right before this video came out, J.D. Vance, who just always makes it worse, had this to say.
You guys in the media, you're acting like Donald Trump filmed a TV commercial at a gravesite. He was there providing emotional support to a lot of brave Americans who lost loved ones they never should have lost, and there happened to be a camera there, and somebody gave him permission to have that camera there.
Yeah, as we found out, that wasn't the case. This is a photo that he took posing with a thumbs up over a dead soldier's grave. Seems wildly inappropriate to me to be so glib and happy to be with grieving families that you're giving a thumbs up. It shows that, I think, not just a lack of empathy, but just a complete lack of self-awareness as to what it is. Everything's a photo op for him.
It's just also hilarious. It's like, he wasn't filming a commercial. Did we use it as a commercial? Yes. Did we put a sappy, acoustic guitar over it? Yes. Did we cut together all of the best clips to make him look like he really cared and gave a shit? Yes. And it's like, well, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, I don't know what you want us to believe, J.D. Vance.
And this is Trump giving a thumbs up with an orphaned baby who just lost his parents in the El Paso massacre. That shows the same shit-eating grin. I'm here. I made it. Take my photo. It's all about me. If I have a thumbs up, it must be that things are going well. And I think that you're that stupid that you're going to believe it. You're that dumb, my followers, that you're going to say, hey, he made it there with a thumbs up. He really cares.
Do you think that and this is always the question for me with Trump, how much of it is malevolent kind of, sinister, beliefs, and how much of it is just he's an idiot? You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't know, like his go-to thing is always thumbs up picture. Every single photo he takes, he looks like he's posing for a selfie with someone at an airport. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't look at all like he's aware of the world around him, the context, the circumstances he's in.
Yeah.
He doesn't really, so to me, it's like, there is no difference between he looks the same when he's standing next to Grimace from McDonald's as he does when he's standing next to a Gold Star family.
So just to get to the bottom of the controversy, because it's still going on, and I don't think it's going to leave him anytime soon. He did not have permission to film there, and this was confirmed by the Army. The U.S. Army said an employee at Arlington National Cemetery who tried to, quote, ensure adherence to rules that prohibit political activities at the cemetery, quote, was abruptly pushed aside, but that the employee decided to not press charges against the Trump campaign staffers who pushed her. Her being the operative word, the idea that they saw a woman in their way and quickly pushed her out. Talking Points memo also reported that the whole point of doing this video was that they would distribute the video and attack Vice President Harris and President Biden for not showing up for their campaign event, which they sought to portray as an established memorial.
They're opportunists.
Absolute opportunists. And so moving into Don't Be That Guy, Stephen Chung, spokesperson for the Trump campaign, who I have to say, he makes Jabba the Hutt look cute and cuddly. In a statement to NPR, Stephen Chung, the Trump campaign spokesman, strongly rejected the notion of a physical altercation, adding, "We are prepared to release footage if such defamatory claims are made." And they never released the footage. Shocker.
Big surprise, yeah.
The fact is that a private photographer was permitted on the premises, and for whatever reason, an unnamed individual, clearly suffering from a mental health episode, decided to physically block members of President Trump's team during a very solemn ceremony, going right to calling her crazy. Again, they're piling on a woman. Decided to physically block members of the Trump's team. They knew they didn't have a right. And this is, again, misogyny. Don't be that guy. Next one. Chris LaCivitia, who we've spoken about before on this show, he went to town on this, saying, for a despicable individual to physically prevent President Trump's team from accompanying him to this solemn event is a disgrace and does not deserve to represent the hallowed grounds of Arlington National Cemetery. Whoever this individual is spreading this lies are dishonoring the men and women of our armed forces, and they're disrespecting everyone who paid the price for defending our country. Again, a woman doing her job, and they were told to not do that. Now, this guy cares so much about not dishonoring the men and women of our armed forces that pay the ultimate price, that he was attacking them on Twitter, reposting this, hoping to trigger the hacks at Secretary of the Army.
I see. What's interesting to me is just, again, like the despicable, like this idea of like just these vehement, words that are being used because they just like, don't you understand how important it is that this man, former President Trump, get to stand in here and have his picture taken? The reason that these guys, I feel like, can do nothing except make it worse is because they ultimately feel that that what they're doing is the right thing, regardless of how you get there. The means to an end is all, is less important.
Ethics be damned.
Gotta wonder how they were raised and what kind of ethics they were exposed.
Yeah. What kind of character do they have?
I think that in the same way that, you see this idea of like, we need to disenfranchise voters. We need to try and rig this. We need to try and figure out a way to kind of like, and we'll even use that language and throw that back at them, saying they stole the election. All this. But you can see all of the like actual election interference in there, and it's not, again, I don't think it's necessarily just because they're these mustache twirling villains. They feel that they're doing the right thing.
Yes, they
feel that what they're doing is more important. And so this idea of some silly young woman saying, "I'm sorry, you're not allowed to do this. You can't." There's a law and a rule that says you can't make Arlington, cemetery your prop for your political campaign.
How dare she?
That he'd be like, "You're despicable. Don't you understand? We're trying to save this country from all of these others. We're trying to make America great again, and you're just trying to get in our way. Like, don't you understand? We're doing this for you." There are times when I see people voting so clearly against their own interests that I sort of understand that feeling of, man, I guess it's up to the people that understand things a little bit better to save you from yourself.
Oh yeah.
And I know that is an arrogant way to think, because it's this idea of I know better than you do. Sometimes it's hard not to feel that way when it feels like they've been so manipulated by Fox News and the machine.
But also, this guy's just a straight up hypocrite, because for him to in one breath, in one statement, saying, complaining about dishonoring the men and women of our armed forces, and then being like, reposting this hoping to trigger the hacks at the Army. So who is this guy, Chris LaCivita? He's famous for the Swift boat attack ads against John Kerry. And in case you're wondering if he had any regrets or second thoughts about this quote from him from just a year or two ago said, "I don't really care what people think about the Swift boat ads. I'd do it again tomorrow." And for those who were not alive 20 years ago, the ads attacked John Kerry, a decorated veteran, for lying about wartime atrocities when he testified to Congress. And they actually had happened. In fact, these are some of John Kerry's military commendations: Bronze Star with Combat, Silver Star Medal, Purple Heart Medal with 2 stars, Combat Action Ribbon, Naval President Unit Citation, National Defense Service Medal, Navy Rifle Marksmanship Ribbon, Navy Pistol Marksmanship Ribbon, Republic of Vietnam Campaign Medal, highly decorated veteran. And this is who they smeared as lying about his campaign.
God, I never knew that much about John Kerry.
And at the 2004 convention, making fun of the fact that he had been wounded multiple times, people were wearing Band-Aids with a little Purple Heart on it, making fun of his having, "Oh yeah, so you got shot 3 times in battle, ha ha ha." And meanwhile, what were they wearing at the last convention? They were wearing tampons on their ears to celebrate
what?
Fucking maxi pad, like looking big white bandages over their ear to honor Trump's sacrifice that he's got shot and it grazed his ear. Like what a fucking hero who he is, And so it sort of shows you how low that mindset is, and that it was always there. Yeah. It's not really just a MAGA thing.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Well, if they see some kind of thing that they think is helping to support, then it's amazing what people will.
And it's always a joke. Yeah. So just to reiterate, this is the Army statement refuting the Trump campaign claims. Participants in the August 26th ceremony and the subsequent Section 60 visit were made aware of federal laws, Army regulations, and DoD policies which clearly prohibit political activities on cemetery grounds. An ANC employee who attempted to ensure adherence to these rules was abruptly pushed aside. Consistent with the decorum expected at ANC, this employee acted with professionalism and avoided further disruption. This incident was unfortunate, and it's also unfortunate that the ANC employee and her professionalism has been unfairly attacked. And so speaking of attacked, let's just take another look at one more Don't Be That Guy from this week. Corey Lewandowski. You can see the picture back there. There's that circle. That's him, Corey Lewandowski, right there. And he was rehired at the campaign for Trump this time around. Why was he fired before? Well, in 2016, he was charged with assaulting a female reporter at an event, and we'll watch this video right now. Corey Lewandowski, Michelle Fields, he comes in like a linebacker. He's like, get away from him, shoves her.
Ooh!
Instant replay. Comes in there, get away from her. Boom! So, police charged him with assault. So here's another one. Corey Lewandowski cuts deal on charges stemming from alleged unwanted sexual advances.
Ooh.
He, at a Las Vegas event, he made sexual advances and sexually harassed a wife of a major GOP donor, including stalking her throughout the hotel, told her she had a nice ass, and threw a drink at her. Now, I wonder who could have been the one that went right to a female employee and shoved her out of the way when they came through with cameras. Yeah. I can't help but wonder which one of the Trump staffers was the guy who said, I'm going to be the man. I can't wait to push this woman out of the way to show her who's boss. Because I'm that fucking small.
Right.
I'm that fucking insecure that I can't wait to lay hands on this woman who's protecting the dignity of dead soldiers.
I'm just surprised that, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but why didn't the person just fall on their sword? Why didn't somebody just say, yeah, it was me, I was rude, I'm so sorry. Trump would never have been okay with me doing this. I should have I apologized, I was caught up. Basically just fall on the grenade or whatever. You know what I mean? Like take the shot and then have Trump be like, that staff member was immediately
what a
fired.
misunderstanding.
Yeah, but it's like, again, incapable of, one, you can't possibly admit wrong in that realm.
Right.
And two, this idea that someone would be sacrificial in that way. I mean, obviously, we've already seen anytime someone even comes close to sort of being like, they get the book thrown at them. And so now I think everyone's like, I don't want to be the guy that like defends Trump when it counts, because guess what? He immediately, throws me under the bus, and then I'm doing jail time for it, or trying to deal with some horrible, huge, thing I owe now.
Right. Yeah. And just to confirm, the Arlington employee feared retaliation from Trump supporters, and that's why she didn't file a police report.
Yeah, I don't blame her.
I don't blame her at all,
Good
right?
grief.
Yeah. And it's unreal that we have this kind of vigilante mob that's out there that people know they have to deal with, and that our legal system is going to be a couple of years late in trying to round them up and hold them accountable.
Right.
After the Hunter Biden trial, the jurors were talking to the press. They weren't fearful of Biden supporters coming after them. Like big surprise, right? So it did happen. As much as Trump's going to pretend it didn't happen, but you can see that this blew up in his face. And so when you see this clip of him being interviewed about it, you'll see how proud he is now of this whole thing.
Should your campaign have put out those videos and photos?
Well, we have a lot of people. We have people, TikTok people. We're leading the internet. That was the other thing. We're so far above her on the internet.
But on that hallowed ground, should they have put out the images of those?
I don't know what the rules and regulations are. I don't know who did it. And it could have been them. It could have been the parents. It could have been somebody.
It was your campaign's TikTok, though, that put out the video.
I really don't know anything about it. All I do is I stood there and I said, if you'd like to have a picture, we can have a picture. If somebody did it, this was a setup by the people in the administration that, Trump is coming to Arlington. That looks so bad for us.
Wait. Trump is now saying that his campaign's photo op was a setup?
Yeah. So you see the projection and the fact that he will never claim responsibility. He insists he doesn't know anything about the rules or what he was doing there or why he was there.
3 different defenses all at once.
Yeah, 3 different defenses all at once.
Which to me reminds me of like my child when I
I didn't know.
Who made, I don't understand. You ate this entire, bag of cookies. Why did you think that was right? Like, well, and then the 3 different sort of 1, 2, 3 of like, it wasn't me, or it was I only had a few, and then but somebody else must have come in, and then it was just like, oh, I didn't think it was a big deal. Just this idea of throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing if anything sticks.
Absolutely. But the fact that he goes right to blaming the administration for setting him up because it looks bad, and he knows
that
it looks
right
bad.
there, he knows that his people are going to respond to, and that's all they're going to hear from that whole thing. That's it.
Well, they're going to choose which one of those they want to stick to. They're like, well, I heard an excuse, so I'll just believe that. I'll just close my eyes.
Look at him. He sounds like he's not, like he's telling the truth. He sounds like he is.
He's like, I don't know.
We've got TikTok people.
Yeah, we're leading the internet. He wants to change the subject, and this reporter finally held him to account. And I think that means a lot.
I really appreciate when he tried to steer it away, and she was like, no. But your campaign posted this.
Yeah,
you can't
exactly.
You can't say, well, maybe the family did. I don't know who did it.
And again, he's throwing the Gold Star families under the bus by saying like, oh, they did it.
Yeah.
And so it's just so reprehensible. And just to show how much it's still bothering him, this was a recent post on Truth Social saying there was no conflict or fighting at Arlington National Cemetery last week. It was a made-up story by Comrade Kamala and her misinformation squad. She made it all up to make up for the fact that she and Sleepy Joe have blood on their hands for the incompetent Afghanistan withdrawal, the most embarrassing day in U.S. history. They should have been at Arlington, not on a beach or studying for debate. Thank you to my friends, the great Gold Star families, for revealing the truth of a beautiful day of honor. Could not have been a nicer moment, and there were no fights or problems, only in the heads of those that are destroying our country, MAGA 2024. There was over a dozen different political cartoons making fun of him that I was thinking of showing. But this tweet from Liz Cheney kind of said it best. Can you imagine what Republican leaders would say if Kamala Harris assaulted a service person at Arlington so she could illegally use dead veterans for a photo op where she smiled and gave a thumbs up over their graves? You are satires of men.
That is a pretty good line. Satires of men.
You are satires of men. And so as much as I can sit here and be like, don't be that guy, don't be that guy, this week in Men Making Men Look Bad, satires of men is just brutal.
Yeah.
And it cuts right where, she knows it hurts them. So it's an embarrassing spectacle to have to look at all of this. But in debunking time, here's a headline from 2021. Trump calls Biden's Afghanistan withdrawal wonderful and positive. And then this was a story that was reported saying that Trump ordered a rapid withdrawal from Afghanistan after election loss. After he lost, he refused to coordinate anything with the incoming administration. He wanted to rip out the entire army all at once, and advisors put him against it. In fact, going down the whole list, Trump, not Biden, negotiated directly with the Taliban terrorists and excluded the Afghan army. Trump, not Biden, drew down U.S. forces from 13,000 to 2,500, making them vulnerable to attack. Trump, not Biden, ordered the release of 5,000 Taliban fighters from prison, one of whom would become the new leader of Afghanistan. Trump, not Biden, wanted to invite the Taliban leaders to Camp David on the anniversary of September 11th.
I remember that.
Trump,
what was
not
his reason for that again? Was it just photo op?
Yeah.
More thumbs up?
Hey, look, I can make peace with anybody.
Yeah.
Trump, not Biden, agreed to a May 1st exit from Afghanistan, then bragged that he didn't need an exit strategy. Trump, not Biden, refused to brief Biden's incoming team on the situation in Afghanistan or anything else for that matter. Trump, not Biden, shut down every air base in Afghanistan except one, crippling the U.S.'s ability to extract its assets safely.
That valuable information right there, most of America doesn't have. Most of these people, depending on who presented that information to them, will or will not believe it.
Yeah, we lived through all of that. That's the thing, is the Trump supporters' willingness to retcon everything that just happened,
Right.
Week to week. Trump deferred from the draft 4 times for bone spurs. So while they're saying that Tim Walz didn't serve enough time when he served 24 years in the Army National Guard, this is worth comparing to.
Splitting hairs over words like weapons of war and things like that.
Exactly. Trump on John McCain. He's not a war hero. He was a war hero because he was captured. I like people who weren't captured. Well, yeah, like people who declared they had bone spurs and got out of the draft.
I find the bone spurs thing too just so hilarious because you could not have come up with, like, if you were a writer to be like, what goofy ass thing should we say he has? You know,
Yeah.
bone spurs to me sounds made up already.
It sounds weak.
Yeah, it sounds like you couldn't have invented something more.
No. I need you to rewrite this, okay? Just
Always. It's always like the laziest writing is the reality of his terribleness.
Yeah, can't you just say I have, like, you know, I'm nearsighted or something like that?
Yeah.
You know, it's gonna be like, no, he's got bone spurs. It feels like, you know, a Norm Macdonald joke or something.
Yeah, and Trump called troops suckers and losers, according to Trump's chief of staff, John Kelly, and multiple sources. And this was at a military cemetery. He even said, you know, I don't get it. Why?
Yeah.
What was in it for them? Trump said the Congressional Medal of Honor is much better than the Military Medal of Honor. They're soldiers. They're either in very bad shape because they've been hit so many times by bullets or they're dead. So the idea,
you get this one without dying.
Yeah, but the idea that he's like putting the medal on a dead person right next to him is also like, what are you fucking thinking, dude?
Yeah.
He is crazy. Trump attacked Gold Star families.
Does anybody remember the last convention with the 2016 convention with all of the Gold Star families?
Yeah, he started attacking the wife. Yeah, because he's like, oh, well, that's her. She didn't say anything during the speech, and that's because of her religion, and that's what's and their religion is the problem, not the fact that their son died, you know, in this, you know, while I'm defaming
not
him.
America enough.
Trump took no action against Russia placing bounties on U.S. troops. There's one that I know that people forgot. So, Teachr is somebody who grew up in a military family. How does this make you feel?
Oh man, it's it is really unnerving, because knowing what I know about the military, and then to see this type of a perspective, you know, being just thrown on it, makes me want to do violent things, honestly.
Yeah.
But luckily I'm getting better at redirecting that energy. That's it.
What do you think, John? Do you think that a lot of conservative people like that people that are very pro-military, that laundry list of stuff, like I remember thinking way back in 2016 after the John McCain thing, like, oh, he's done. That's enough. That should have been any politician.
That was sacrilegious.
That is like, there's no way that if he was a Democrat, he would be done.
Yeah.
If he's a Republican, he's cooked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
My grandfather was a fighter pilot. He was decorated. He's actually painted in the Air and Space Museum. And I know he was conservative, and honestly, I think he'd be infuriated at this. I think the kind of contempt that is displayed by MAGA and the supporters and Trump, it would just, you know, he'd go red in the face. He would have no quarter for these. You know, he led men. I remember when he told me how, you know, he was a hotshot fighter pilot, and then he was ordered to take over an Air Force base that was at that point called O'Hare in Chicago. And he knew that because he was 28, the other pilots weren't going to respect him and listen to his command. So the first thing he had to do was go up and fly with them and outfly them and show them what he knew. And he did, and he won their respect.
That's incredible.
At his funeral, it was a military funeral, a guy got up who served under him in Germany. And I'll never forget it. He said, he was the only commander I never heard troops badmouth. And I thought that was the whole point of the Army, was to badmouth your commander. So to dedicate your life and to have seen other people die and to have been on that team, that Republican team for so long, and then see this kind of disdain. I mean, he wanted to be buried in Arlington, but his wife wanted to be buried together with him. And so I've been to Arlington. It's a very sacred place. It's you don't forget it, you know. And you don't forget watching the changing of the guard for the tomb of the unknown soldier. And so it's deeply offensive to the ideas that I was raised with, that I think, you know, people lived and died for. And I think it's frankly a cancerous mindset to allow people like this to try to define a narrative of contempt and punching down on people who work at the cemetery, while at the same time they try to use them for a photo prop.
Totally.
And I think that this is, in some ways, it sent a chill through me the same way that January 6th did. Like I thought there were some things that were sacred. So our white guy of the week is Greg Palast, investigative journalist, and I featured him in my documentary Free for All. And he spoke to us about his new documentary, Vigilantes, Inc. And this is an interview clip where he explains what the film's about. Greg, thanks so much for making the time. I really appreciate what you're doing. Tell me about your new film.
New film is Vigilantes, Inc., America's new vote suppression hitmen. And the latest threat, really dangerous, hardly been covered in the press. But under laws in Georgia and several other states, individuals can just challenge the vote of another person, and they can do thousands of challenges. So I can say, Ennis, you shouldn't be allowed to vote in California. You don't really live here. Okay, that's a personal challenge. Under these vigilante laws, you would have to go into your county office, prove you are who you are. Now, here's the trick. Almost everyone who's being challenged is non-white. You're talking black people, Hispanics, Asian Americans, and by the way, also a lot of American natives too. So for the group that's at the center of this attack on voters is called True the Vote. They made that film 2,000 Mules, which was, launched at Mar-a-Lago. Now, 2 years ago, I did a preliminary version of the film, exposed the game. There were 88 vigilantes. They challenged 180,000 people. One woman, as you'll see in the film Vigilantes, Inc., one single woman challenged 32,000 people. Just sent in an email and blocked 32,000 people from voting. Another guy, who is, by the way, the vice chairman of the Republican Party in Georgia, he challenged 4,000 voters. Most of them were black soldiers out of Fort Benning. One woman challenges 32,000 voters. Another challenges 4,000 voters. This is going on. Now, it was 88 challengers 2 years ago. They've now signed up 40,000 challengers. They've already, as of August 2 of this year, True the Vote's vigilante vote challengers have already blocked the registration of 851,000 people. Almost no one is discussing it. Mark Elias, I will say that Kamala Harris just hired him this week as we're speaking to challenge these challengers, but it's just murder. So that's the biggest, I think that's the biggest threat to our democracy right now. Forget the January 6th nut cases and the guys with the horns and stuff like that. The real danger are vigilante vote challenges.
Is there anything that we can do about it at this point?
Yeah. Number one, protect your own registration. So the first thing you do is you check your registration. I don't care if you've been voting in the same place for 20 years. I want you to check your registration. Go to saveyourvote.org. Saveyourvote.org. You can do two things. You can check your registration. The other thing you can do is download my film, Vigilantes, Inc., which we'll make available for free, no charge. Download it on September 13. My producers, Martin Sheen, my favorite president, President Bartlett, and George DiCaprio, and with the help of Leonardo DiCaprio, you can download the film Vigilantes, Inc. without charge.
That's great. Thanks so much for taking the time to tell us about this, and congratulations on your film.
Thank you.
You're telling me 2,600 miles away, 2 days for an election, that if I want to vote, all I have to do is show up and prove as an American citizen that I have the right to vote again?
Is this an attempt to remove a lot of Democrats, black people from voting to win the election?
I am far from that, sir, and you have crossed the line.
And today to come out and not be able to vote and no one can give you an explanation, like, it's extremely emotional and it bothers me. It bothers me to my core.
And that's why Greg Palast is our White Guy of the Week. He's giving us hope and he's uncovering this stuff. And I'm proud to have made a documentary. Yeah, and if you see my documentary I made with him in Free For All back in 2008, you scared the crap out of me then, but we still got a democracy. So let's see what he says. And his film will be downloadable for free probably by the time this is out. So thank you guys very much for making it. Thank you for joining us. And again, we do not have a Patreon, but you can donate to the Harris-Walz campaign through secure.actblue.com/donate/white dudes. I'm John Ennis. This is Morley. This is legendary street artist Teachr. Thank you guys very much, and we'll see you next week. This episode was recorded at Green Lab Studios in Los Angeles, California. Our engineers were Paul Roman, Daniel Amato, and Owen Stinsmullen.